Hey everyone, this is Garrett Netherland with the Mount Valor Podcast. We're bringing you EP.4. Today, I have my good buddy Devyn Bryant joining us today. Devyn's a really good friend. He's been in my marriage group for like the last six-ish years, and he's one of the guys that I've just really grown to love and really admire and value. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Devyn so he can intro himself.
Hey, Garrett, appreciate the intro, my guy. Appreciate you having me on the podcast. Really excited to do it. Again, my name is Devyn Bryant. I've known Garrett since about 2016, 2017. Around that time is when my wife and I got married. We were both still in college, technically speaking, and our friendship has just blossomed from there. So really excited to be a part of your podcast, brother.
Yeah, love it. Well, hey man, I wanted to get this story started kind of back when you were in high school and kind of just tell me like what your faith was like in high school.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess you could take it back to even beyond before that. I uh I grew up in the church, grew up in a small private Christian school. So at the age of 5, pastor comes to the front, says, "Who wants to accept Jesus Christ?" Raise my hand, do all that. And so we followed that all the way through to high school. I was always in a private Christian high school. And so, yeah, I've been walking with Jesus for a while. I don't think my faith really became my own until much later on in life.
Mm. And like when you say that not being your own, when you were 5 raising your hand, did you know why you're raising your hand? Or were you just more like, everyone else is raising their hand, so I'm going to raise
Yeah,
my hand?
definitely. Great question. It was more fear based about everybody else is doing it, fear based about, oh, I don't know what's going to happen when I die, So, yeah.
Totally, totally. I'm right there with you. I think I was 14 when I committed myself, and I was at a church camp, a church summer camp, and the guy was like had this like mannequin up on the stage and like wrote just all these gnarly sins all over this mannequin, and he's like, Jesus took our sins. He went down to hell. He said, no, thank you, and came back up and rose again. And then it was, if you don't want to go burn in hell, you should ask to be saved by Jesus. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I'll do it. And,
Yeah.
that kind of started my story, but it's definitely a lot different now.
I
Um,
can understand that. I kind of had a similar story. I remember going to a church camp as well in the summer. I was around 12 or 13 years old, and there was an altar call. Funny enough, from the age of 5 to 12 or 13, whenever there was an altar call, I always did it. And so this gentleman, like an elder in this church camp, noticed that I was always going up to the altar calls, and he's like, "Hey, aren't you saved?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm just so terrified." He's like, "Son, once you're his, you're always his." So I stopped going up to altar calls after 13. I thought I had to re-up every single time.
Totally. It's like that when they altar call and you're like, is he speaking to me?
Yeah,
I'll just go just in case.
just in case, get that covering.
Totally. Hey, so let's go to high school now. And what was your walk like? What were you doing? How were you doing it? Who was your crowd? Kind of stuff like that.
It's a great question. For me, I was a young man. I feel like a lot of my walk should have come from a father figure,
Mm,
right? But from the age of 12 to 18, my mom raised me single-handedly. So I was really just sourcing my faith from the different men in my life. And thank God my mom didn't listen to me and she kept me in a small private Christian institution where the teachers weren't there because of the salary. They were
hmm
there because they loved us. So really I sourced my faith from my high school principal, my high school football coach, my track coach, my basketball coach, physics teacher, baseball coach, right? I was really sourcing my faith from them. And really, although I was going to church on Sundays, I really got spiritually fed in our chapel sessions at school on, I think it was Monday and Wednesday. I think we had chapel twice a week. But again, being 16 years old and really sourcing your faith from your school, and not really being guided through that, outside of the hours of school,
Yeah.
really seeing what these guys were doing. They were men of valor, men I respected. And so I was trying to source my faith from them. But yeah, I was not leading it on my own between the ages of 12 to 18. As far as the crowd I was hanging out with, it's a very interesting question. I've always been around a diverse group of people. I was on the basketball team, baseball team, football team, track team. I was a captain of my varsity football team, but I also did junior high, or not junior high robotics. I also did high school robotics. And we'll get into that story a little bit later as I got my engineering degree. So yeah, I
hmm
hung out with a little bit of everybody.
Nice. You can touch them all.
Yeah.
That's cool. So after high school, what was your aspirations of kind of what you wanted to do? You're a multi-athlete. You obviously are really smart in the science and the STEM. What were kind of your goals and aspirations going into your senior year?
Yeah, very, very interesting that you should ask. Remember my high school football coach telling me, like, Dev, if you really worked at it, you could be a third or fourth round draft pick in football. And I really struggled with a lot of confidence. It may not have appeared like that on the outside, but internally there was always this battle and this warring of confidence. And so I didn't really believe him. At the same time, my mother is a pharmaceutical research scientist. So science, technology, engineering, mathematics field, I've always placed a high premium on. So I guess going into college, I wanted to play in the NFL, didn't really believe I could play in the NFL. And at the same time, I knew that I wanted to get a really good high paying job. And I also, again, being somebody who struggled with confidence, I wanted to get a degree in something that would make people look at me. So I chose engineering, if I'm being frank. So going into college, it was like, I don't know, I'm just going to figure this out. But I know that at least when I leave this institution, I'm going to have some money because of the degree I get.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's interesting when we like really rely on our degrees to be like, hey, this is what I'm going to go do in the world, and I'm not looking back. But anywho, so going forward now, you're in college. Does your faith kind of, you're obviously in a bigger crowd now, a little bit, there's more influences around you. What did your freshman year kind of look like?
Oh yeah, I waxed and waned just like the moon, brother. I mean, you leave a small, tiny Christian, private school bubble, and then you get into an institution where there's people from all these different walks of life. And because I was never really somebody who was really leading or guiding or discovering my own faith in school, when I was left without that backdrop, well, I was just tossed within the waves. I just did what everybody else did. You couldn't distinguish my life from the life of anybody who was a non-believer, really. All for at least for the first couple of years. Um, at the same time, when you're asking about, what do you want to do? Freshman year, as far as football, was really rocky. I was bottom of the totem pole, um, little fish in a very big pond. And then sophomore and junior year, I really started to gain some traction. I started to hone my craft. I actually started to get really good. And it was at that time where I was still struggling with imposter syndrome the entire time I was in college, but my stats were showing me something else. And so at the time, I know I was like, well, maybe I could give this thing a shot. I started thinking about that after junior. Maybe I could give this thing a shot. At the same time, engineering was going really well as well. I was maintaining a 3.5 GPA in mechanical engineering. I was a vice president of the National Society of Black Engineers chapter on campus. So really, my faith just took a back seat. My identity was completely wrapped up into overachieving. And then on top of that, I had an incredibly beautiful and loving girlfriend who I'd been with since high school. So my life looked really stable from the outside looking in, right? And don't get me wrong, I never left God behind, but everything was going the way that I had planned it, the way that I had wanted it. And, God was there, but he wasn't my focal point. My overachievements really were.
And do you think your imposter syndrome like drove your overachievement of, this is like what I need to be doing?
100%. Because I didn't have faith that came from within, because I didn't know how to tap into the validation from the Father, I really had to source my validation from other people and maintained high grades. If I was an overachiever, if I was really good on the football field, then I would constantly keep that imposter syndrome at bay.
I hear that. But I do love, even though there's imposter syndrome and there's overachieving, I really do like, it sounds like you're a man of a work ethic. Where do you think you gained that work ethic from? Or do you just think it's a God gift?
Yeah, I mean, God gives us gifts, so that's definitely something I think I was just born with. But I think it started back in when I started playing youth football, really. I've never been the biggest, the fastest, or the strongest, but there was just something about football. And I understand this translates every walk of life, every skill, craft, or whatever, even every sport. But there was just something about football for me personally, where I found that if I outworked you, that I would succeed over you. I can't tell you how many times there were guys who were just athletically more gifted than I was, but I would outperform them on the field. So I think that's really where it came from, is just understanding from the age of 8, just being started in sports really early. And honestly, even scholastics, I've never been someone that's really good at math. My SAT score with math was well below the average of an engineering student entering college. I think the average was 600-700 in the math section. I got like a 500. But I knew that if I busted my tail and put in that many more hours into my math and physics studies, that I would do well. So I don't know, it's just something at a young age where I realized that, hey, I may not be the smartest guy, I may not be the biggest guy, I may not be the fastest guy, but gosh darn it, if I'm not going to outwork you.
I hear that. And, that's an interesting, and it sounds like it's a realization where, when men are trying to pursue their fields or pursue a girl or pursue, whatever place in there, a lot of the time they're just like, oh, it's too hard, or, oh, it's, they have all their excuses in the world. But it sounds like at the age of 8, you really realized and kind of came to the conclusion, if I work hard enough, I will outperform. And that's crazy that you like come to that at 8 years old.
Yeah, 100%. And again, a lot of this is I can't take credit for this. My mom has always driven me to excel in anything that I do. And I just listened. I think one of the biggest things was I didn't grow up around siblings. I do have a brother, but we have a very large age gap. So I grew up by myself. And so when I looked around and realized that I was growing up, with, my mom and just me, I realized that I didn't have anyone else to look to from their mistakes. So oftentimes I hear about from younger siblings. So I look to my older sibling, and learn from their mistakes. And for me, I've always been someone that didn't want to make too many mistakes. Someone told me something that was further advanced than I was in career, years, or whatever. I just listened,
Which is a really underrated gift, right? Like I don't know, people have a hard time valuing listening. Mostly people just want to talk and get heard. So just at a young age, I compliment you for knowing that trait and understanding that trait and honing in on that trait, because not a lot of people do that as well as you do. And you learned it at 8 years old.
Yeah, most certainly.
That's awesome. So going forward, you're in let's just say your junior year, because you said in a couple of years, you started really picking up momentum. You're getting this work ethic going, and you're starting to see your results in the stats. Your confidence is going up internally as much as it is externally now. Is there any acknowledgement of God yet, or is he still kind of on the back burner at this point?
Yeah, God is in this little box that I pull out whenever I need a favor.
He's the genie.
Yeah, God, do this thing for me on the football field so I can glorify you through football. Or God, do this thing for me in the alumni office so that I can glorify you through my scholastics or whatever. God was in this box. And I don't know how much of this, he heard and answered, because again, it was very selfish and man driven. But God, I'm in this box, so just do this thing for me so that I can keep you on the back burner, but then glorify you with my actions,
Yeah, totally. Which is something that I think a lot of guys have in common, including myself. You kind of just want this like, oh, hey, I'll pick you up, and then, we'll go do some things and I'll drop you off again. And, like, appreciate the hangout, but now I'm going to take it from here. And that was like my faith for the longest time before I really understood who God was and what he was about and what he really wanted me to do while I'm here on earth.
Yeah.
So now that you're junior year, you got this, now you're kind of using God as like a, quote unquote genie. Now, what does it look like with your schooling and with football? Does it keep taking off? Like, what does senior year look like? You're going into senior year at USD and you're doing well. What does it look like now? Are you still with Eden? Are you, what's going on?
Yeah. So thank God for an amazing wife. They say in the word, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. And God bless me. I definitely found my good thing in high school. I actually tell Eden, if I could segue really quickly, Eden's my wife. I tell Eden many times, I was always that straight edge kid in high school, even somewhat straight edge in college. And I constantly ask God, where's my reward for always doing the right thing? Where's my reward for always doing the right thing? And what I realized is my reward was my wife this entire time. I mean, every single day, she is just an absolutely new blessing that I just tell her, anything that I ever did good in my life has come to fruition in a blessing through you. So I just had to give my wife her flowers really quick because she is a huge part of my story. Amen. So getting to your question, senior year, I kind of backslid a little bit when it came to football. Grades were still there, achievements were still there, but I kind of backslid due to football. I looked back on my junior year after senior year had ended. And I was like, man, that must have been a fluke. Like, I'm really not that guy. And so that was really tough for me. And at this time, my wife and I are going to be transitioning into getting married as well. So there's a whole bunch of life change that's happening. I'm no
Did you
longer the
already
same.
propose at this time? Did you propose senior year?
I sure did. I proposed November, I want to say November 12th, 2016. It was our last home game at the University of San Diego. It was actually the best game I ever played. And I was like, dang, I should have proposed to you every single game senior year. Yeah, there's a lot of life change happening. I'm about to be graduating. She's graduating. We're getting married. Is the NFL even a viable option? Trying to get an agent. There's a lot of things happening at once to where that imposter syndrome started creeping back out again.
And backing up from that, just a quick segue, this is kind of what I've asked all the guys so far on the show is like, what does courting look like for you? Like, what did it look like? I know it's a little bit different because you and Eden have been together since high school, but, how did you guys stay on, kind of the straight and narrow? How did you guys, how did you treat Eden before you got proposed to her? And like, what does dates look like,
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure if I can answer the courting question because I started dating Eden when I was 15, almost 16 years old. And from 15, almost 16 years old to even when I proposed to her, it was just very unintentional. It was not intentional whatsoever, far different from how I would court Eden now if we were both adults. But we stuck by each other's side because although I was very unintentional and immature, I knew a good thing when I had it. Oftentimes, I tell Eden, I knew exactly when I knew that I was going to be with you for the rest of my life, and I knew that I loved you in high school. And at that time, because again, I struggled with imposter syndrome, I told her, I think I was in the Midwest visiting my family one time. We were up late on a phone call, and I said, you know what, Eden, I think you love me than I love myself. You love me more than I love myself. And that's when I knew, okay, I may not be the most intentional person. I may, have my screw ups here or there, but I'm never leaving this woman. And also being raised by a single mom, there was something imprinted upon my heart that I never wanted to like disrespect the person that I'm with on any. So I think those two things right there. Well, what made me stick by my wife's side and what made my wife stick by my side? I think she saw the raw material, even though I was a very unintentional young man. And so I think right now what courting looks like is intentionality, making your intentions made clearly known from the jump and not deviating from them. Speak to your future partner about what your guys' values are. Having tough conversations, making sure that you're aligned in vision. I think all of those things are conversation topics that should be had from the beginning so that you don't waste time and that they continue to show up as you're dating and courting. But again, as somebody who started dating at 15, 16 years old and got married at 21, almost 22, I did not have that journey.
Love it though. I still love the fact that your determination, your discipline, it still stays, in every aspect of your life. It might look a little different in every aspect, but it's still all there. And I love the fact that Eden saw, the future you and what you could become, and she like casted that upon you, and it's come true to today. So I love that.
Yeah, my wife saw what I could be before I even saw it. And you're right. No matter what phase of life I've been in, there's been one common theme, which is, I guess, a couple common themes: grit, and discipline. Right, those are two things that are bound around my neck. I don't think they'll ever leave me.
Yep, I agree. And then so going back to now segueing back into college, it's your senior year. I guess now, in high school, your coach told you you could maybe make it third, fourth draft. Now your senior year at USD, you're about to graduate. Where's your head at?
Yeah, I'm about to graduate. Like I said, I'm at a really, really small school. Didn't have the senior year that I wanted to have. Definitely backslidden. So my head at is all right, I've already got my degree. That's great. And I have job offers on the table. And I've also just done my pro day. Quick segue on pro day. I busted my tail for pro day for like 3 months straight.
First off, tell everyone what pro day is.
Okay, so pro day is when college scouts will come to your school to check you out on your metrics. So your bench press, your speed, your on the field drills, all those things. And the colleges come to you because you didn't perform well enough during your time in school to get invited to the national combine that everybody sees in Indianapolis every year. And so because we had a historic season at USD, winning USD's first ever football playoff game, going undefeated in league play, all those things. We had a lot of attention coming to the University of San Diego. And so at this time, I'm like, all right, didn't have a senior year I wanted to have. Pro day didn't go the way I wanted to, not by a mile. In fact, the imposter syndrome crept into my head, and I actually underperformed as opposed to what I had done previously in training, as far as my metrics, my 40, my bench press, so on and so forth. So at this time, the NFL is off the table. I'm newly graduated, have a job offer on the table, newly married, but my passion of being in the, playing football beyond colleges is looming. And so what I'm doing at this time is I go to my coach, my head football coach at USD, and I'm like, Coach, I need you to be honest with me. Can I play in the NFL? He's like, well, what you put on tape? Probably not. But there is this thing called the CFL, the Canadian Football League, which is just a step down from the NFL at the time. Before all the developmental leagues of the USFL, XFL, and all that, there was the CFL. And he's like, you could probably play in that league. He's like, but you're going to have to switch positions, because although I was a really good cover corner, I was very slow. He's like, you're going to have to switch position to safety, which you still get to cover the wide receivers and whatnot. But at the same time, it requires a lot more hitting. Now, I was a short tackler, but I hated hitting. So I ignored his advice. This is one of the few times I didn't listen in my lifetime. And I tried to make it work in the CFL as a cover corner. And every workout I went to, they're like, you cover really well. Your speed is just awful. So I was a bubble guy. So I literally, kid you not, I'd be waiting up in the middle of the night, waiting for a text, a phone call, an email, being woken up out of my sleep, and it just never came. And so at this time, then there's indoor football league that's trying to get me to come play for them. And I'm not even considering that. Like, I have an engineering degree. It's my mindset at the time. I can make double or triple the top amount of money, just doing my engineering degree. I'm not going to do that.
Sure.
Then all the while this is happening, I've been married for a year. I'm not happy. I took the engineering job while on the side. I'm still trying to make it work, going to play football professionally. They don't know this. There are some days I call out of work because I'm just so down bad and sad that I just can't even get out of bed. And it's just rough. And so I think the tipping point for me was when there was an opportunity to go play overseas. And I'm like, all right, well, at least it'd be good money. And I went and I looked at everything, and I was about to take the shot, take the opportunity. And I just realized, what am I doing? I'm going to be playing overseas, thousands of miles away from my newly married wife. And I'm not even playing football on my terms anymore. So I decided to hang up the cleats, and my wife, who I say is instrumental in my journey, gave me a Bible verse. It was Psalms 40, verses 1-2. It was, I waited patiently for the Lord to hear me. He turned to me and he heard my cry. He lifted me out of the mud and the mire. He lifted me out of the pit of despair. He set my feet on solid ground. He steadied me as I walked along. And I kid you not, I went back to my roots and I said, God, life has not gone the way that I wanted. Everything fell flat for me after I graduated. From the outside looking in, I'm married and I have a successful job, but I am miserable. I'm just going to meditate on you for an entire year until I don't feel this sadness anymore. And that's what got me out of my pit.
I love that. I love the realization, right? And I almost feel like you had the same realization that you did when you were 8 years old, like just the same, like, I need to listen. I need to like focus and figure this out, what other people are saying. And then it's almost like flash forward to your senior year or year after you got married. And it's almost the same realization, like just an epiphany, a very big moment where you capture this idea of, what am I doing? How did I get here? This was all me doing this. I think I'm ready to try God's way.
100%. And I had to get back to my roots. I'm like, God, I'm feeling so much pain right now, but I know if I work hard enough, I will find you. If I seek you, you will be found, and eventually this will go away. So I don't know. I literally said to myself, as I called out from work because I was really sad, I said, I'm going to treat my relationship with God like the same way I prepared for a football game. I'm going to relentlessly pursue him like I'm lifting weights. I'm going to relentlessly pursue him like I'm doing wind sprints. I'm going to relentlessly pursue him like I'm doing on the field work, preparing for a game, trying to be seen or known by some sort of scout. If I could do that for football for 14 plus years, I could definitely do it in my relationship with God. So that's how I pursued it.
Yeah. And I think when you get into that kind of mind frame, the devil wants to say like, hey, training for God isn't as sexy or rewarding as training for football. You're
Right.
not going to get anywhere with it. and you're barely going to use it. And it's meaningless almost.
Right. Yeah.
That,
Those doubts definitely crept into my head.
and then I mean, me too. That's kind of why I'm stating it. And what did you do to kind of surpass that? And because I've seen it, right? The scripture you quote, the prayers that you pray, just the walk that you're walking now is so different than when I first met you back in 2016. What has kept you from believing those lies and still pursuing the way God that you do?
Yeah, I think initially, so like you said, you met me in 16. So this journey, I don't think it stopped until 18. 2018 was when I got out of the pit. So from 16 to 18, I was just over the sadness. And I said, I don't care what's going to happen. I don't care what lies come my way. I'm going to do anything I can to escape this sadness of my dreams, falling through the ground, me and practice. What is the word I'm looking for? Plainly embarrassing myself when I had my moment, like all those things, the embarrassment, the sadness, everything like that. I was like, I'm going to do whatever I can to escape this. So that's what kept me going from 16 to 18. And then I think, honestly, just because I was pursuing the Lord so much, something supernaturally happened to I wasn't just pursuing him to get out of sadness. I was pursuing him because I wanted to. And we
Yeah.
can't forget all the while the prayers that were being, lifted up for me, the prayers from my wife or the prayers people who I wasn't even aware of, the community that I got from La Jolla Christian Fellowship. I'm sure at many times you were praying for me and I didn't even know it, so it wasn't all just me. It was the prayers that were being spoken or lifted up on my behalf that I wasn't even aware of that I think kept my momentum.
Which is another just side comment of just how important community is, right? I think a lot of times guys struggle with just finding themselves isolated in a dark corner, not knowing who to turn to, who to talk to, and just really making sure as you're going through this walk with Christ that you're building this community that is able to lift you up during the hard times.
Yeah, locking shields in community is something that I really have um, placed a high importance on in my walk and in my faith. And you're part of that community, and other people are part of that community, and it's really helped me just grow in my faith.
Yeah, I like to use the analogy of a boxer and the team, right? Like when you're training for it in a fighting camp, you have all your different trainers. You got your nutritionist, you got your strength coach, you got your boxing coach, you got your corner coach, you got about 5 to 6, 7 different team members that are behind you, but the only people only see the boxer. They only
Right.
see going into the fight, and then they see that KO. And they're like, oh, and all they're cheering for is that one guy, when really everyone behind that guy is the reason that guy is the way that he is.
Yeah. Well, it's not even that one person. It's that one person in that one moment. But
Mm-hmm.
everything that took place up to that one person, that one moment was a culmination of little moments that happened beforehand that people are just now seeing for the first time.
Totally. And so I want to get back to, so now we're in, senior year, we got by, we're through your first year of marriage. First of all, what's your first year of marriage look like?
Yeah.
Despite the football stuff, kind of just talk us through that.
Yeah. First year of marriage was vastly different than I had expected. I had been with my wife, then girlfriend from the age of, like I said, 15, 16 to about 21, 22. And I thought I knew the ins and outs of her. Couldn't nobody tell me nothing. And then I saw this, and she saw just completely different sides of one another. All the things that had happened in our, lives growing up started to play themselves out in our marriage. And it was interesting because we were living together for the first time.
Mm.
And you think you know somebody until you live with them in a married sense. And everything changes. It was shocking to me that everything changes. And to this day, I'm still learning new things about my wife. But first year of marriage was tough. Like I said, the baggage that we all bring from our past um, played itself out in our marriage. Trust issues, pride issues, the works. And so the first year of marriage was very tough. And I think it wasn't until about a year and a half, 2 years to where we really finally turned the page.
Yeah, I would kind of echo that just from my side too. The first year was like, man, you just thought it was going to be sweet bliss getting married and, getting to share a bed, getting to share a house. You got no adults or like you got no parent supervision, like whatever. It's just all you guys. And then reality hits
Right.
and you're just like, wow, are we the only ones with problems? And like, again, the devil is just so good at isolating you and making you feel like you're alone. And that's like another important part about being in like a community like Devyn and I are now in our marriage community, you know, coming together twice a month and just being able to talk about real issues and pray for each other. And even just, you know, take away the prayer for a second, when you just express problems to each other, everyone kind of comes to the conclusion of like, oh, I'm not alone.
Right.
And I think there's just so much power in realizing that you're not alone and you're able to see other people and see that, you know, and how they got past those problems, or you get to endure those problems together, which feels less weight than if you're to do it on your own.
Right. Yeah. That was huge for me, is realizing I'm not the only one who struggles with this. Oh, and here are guys that I really admire and respect, and they're going through the same things. Like, I'm not crazy. I'm not a weirdo. I'm not this
Yes.
horrible husband.
Yes.
You know? So yeah.
Yes. That's totally a good point. And then now going back into, you know, after your couple years of marriage, what's
Mhm.
your aspirations look like now? Because I know they change, right? You're at this engineering job, you're doing your thing. And then, you know, you were before the engineering job, you're kind of like, this is my way or the highway. Now you kind of transition more into, you know, what is God doing for me? Where does God want me? What does God want me to do in this life now? What's going to give me fulfillment? What's my passion? What does
Yeah.
that all bundle into?
Yeah. You talking about the career journey?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So I worked as an electrical engineer at SDG&E for close to 4 years, and absolutely incredible company. They took care of me. This is a plug for SDG&E. Anything you want to do at that company, you can find it, whether it's HR, engineering, project management, whatever. Absolutely great place to work. Um, but it wasn't my passion. During COVID in 2020, we all had to work from home. And for the first time in my life, I realized that I had been just pursuing this engineering career simply for the satisfaction of getting glory from man. I want people to look at me. I even said when I got to SDG&E, fine, I couldn't make it in the NFL. I'm gonna be this company's fastest rising C-suite executive, because I wanted people to look at me. And no one had ever asked me my entire life, Devyn, why are you pursuing this? Why are you doing what you're doing? What is your passion? What is your overarching why? I didn't know. I just knew that I wanted to do something successful, give me money, and to be looked at. And that was in 2020, and I was left with just the work. I realized I'm not passionate about any of this, you know. And passion in itself is a very strong driver. So for the next, I'd say, year and a half, I tried to figure out what that looked like for me, because I had an amazing marriage, have a good, like I said, a good life, but I'm still feeling this void. And so I got with one of the elders in our church, and he helped me discover my why. And my one word why comes back from my origin story, or not one word, one sentence rather. I'm passionate about developing the next generation of leaders who are currently at a transition phase of life. And I
Mm.
want to develop them such that they can confidently pursue their professional passions post that transitional phase of life. And so institutions like schools are great places for this. So at one point, I'm like, should I be a high school football coach? Should I be a high school principal? Because from my origin story, not having that male figure in my home from 12 to 18, I just saw it filled by principal and coach after coach after coach. I'm like, I want to stand in the gap for other people. But I
Right.
also have this entrepreneurial mindset, and I had to question again, why do I have this entrepreneurial mindset? Well, again, being raised by a single mother on one income, and she's in a field that is fully funded by grants, she could have been laid off at any time. So the insecurity of relying on a paycheck from somebody else really scared me, right? So I knew that I wanted to stand in the gap for the young people, just as people did for me. But I also knew that I wanted to have control over my income. And so I landed on, oh, okay, I want to own a leadership business. But what does that look like? So I went through with one of the elders in our church and did all this work as to what specifically does a leadership business look like. There's lots of ways that you can do leadership businesses. And I had recalled that back in 2018, the godmother of my now daughter, this incredibly godly woman, she's anointed, I swear. In 2018, she could see right through me, even when I couldn't even understand my own intentions. And she told me that I'd be great at pursuing, owning, and operating a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And at that time, I actually laughed at her. I was incredibly arrogant at the age of 23. And I said, I have an engineering degree. What do I look like working in a fast food restaurant? Very, very arrogant. And shame to say that I said it. But in 21, after I realized that I wanted a leadership business, I thought back to that and I said, let me give it a try. So I did some informational webinars. I did some informational interviews with 3 operators. Maybe it might have been 4 operators at the time. And I was like, whoa, this literally checks every single box that I wrote down. I had a fully flushed out 1-page, like it needs to meet all these criteria. And every time I talked to somebody, they hit every single one of the criteria. There was no red flags. I said, wow, okay. Okay, Lord, like this would be a huge leap because I've only been an engineer for 4 years. And after these informational interviews I've had, I'm nowhere near as impressive as I thought I was. Chick-fil-A corporate people wouldn't even look at me for operator candidacy because of my lack of experience. The only way that I could possibly pursue this new journey would to be to work my way up, starting at the bottom of a restaurant and applying through the Chick-fil-A path, working in a Chick-fil-A. And so I talked over with Eden. I'm like, this would be a huge shift. It'd be a huge decrease in pay. This a huge monumental shift. At the same time, when this is all happening, my daughter was born in September of 2021. So now we have nothing out to feed. And so I just sat back and I said, okay, Lord, I really feel as though you've placed this on my heart. I've been humbled by you over these past 3 years because we're in 21 now. And I really feel like you are opening this door. I said, but Lord, every time I've wanted to pursue something, I've gotten it. But it's because I was a bull in a china shop. I beat down the door and I got it and it left me wanting. I said, so Lord, I don't trust myself in this. I said, so if you want me to do this, it's going to have to come through you. I prayed for 6 months. So this is June 21. I prayed for 6 months. I heard nothing. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not supposed to do this. But at the same time, I'm like, God, I felt like you told me to do this. So I got really desperate. So what I did was I said, God, and I don't know how this works. This was my mindset in December 21. I said, God, I'm going to force your hand. You're going to do something for me. I'm not going to let you go. So I decided, never having done this before, I'm going to fast for an entire week. I ate nothing. I got up in the morning. I downed a vitamin B pill. I drank some orange flavored Emergen-C for flavoring, and I just drank water throughout the entire day. It was one of the most painful things and hardest things that I'd ever done to go without food for a week.
And when you say week, is that like a Monday to Sunday or like what was the actual days?
Monday to Monday, 7 full days, brother.
Monday to Monday.
I went full send. And some of the most miraculous things happened to me during that time. My relationship with God just skyrocketed. My spiritual awareness just soared. And but really what happened was that 3 weeks later, God opened that door to Chick-fil-A. A miraculous door was opened to Chick-fil-A. Nothing that I could have foreseen or done for myself. And if that wasn't enough, God said, you know what, Devyn, I'm going to double and triple and quadruple down on this confirmation. The day that I started at my Chick-fil-A, because I had like a 60% salary reduction or pay reduction, something like 60 to 70%. Crazy. The day that I started, that reduction was made up within my wife's compensation, the exact day. And I was like, all right, Lord, like this is what you want. So it'll be 2 years in May. So in May, it'll be 2 years that I've been working at Chick-fil-A Claremont. Proud to say I've been working. They're great company, great people, great operator. Shout out Glenn Murdoch. That's my guy. And in June of this year, I'll start my official application to own my own Chick-fil-A.
That's amazing. Let's go back to the fast and just talk to me about some of the emotions. Like, was there ever any doubt or like time you're just like, I'm done, I'm quitting, can't do it anymore?
Oh yeah.
Kind of talk. Yeah. Like what is that? What does the hard part look like?
I feel like when you're fasting, at least for a week, the hardest part is the first 2 days. So I remember on the 3rd day, I was going to bed and I was like, God, I am hurting. I'm in pain. I'm already doing this fast. I'm not happy with the way things are going. If you're going to have me continue this fast, I need some spiritual food is what I call it. I need some spiritual food to be
some manna.
To be able to make it through to the next day. So I don't know what it was. I got into like this lucid state. I wasn't fully asleep, but I also wasn't fully awake. And I remember God whispered something to me. And I was like, what? That's crazy. How would you? So I texted this guy. So it was something that only this guy would know. It was super specific. So I texted to him and he said, what, dude? I haven't told anyone. How did you know? He said, I was planning on telling you. And I was like, brother, the Lord told me. He's like, that's insane. Literally, I have not told this information to anybody. So I was like, whoa. And so I said to myself, gotta ask for spiritual food. clearly you were watching over this fast, you were blessing it so I can continue on. And there was a lot of other things that happened during that week, a lot of lessons that took place. But for God to give me a word of knowledge over somebody that had not been yet revealed, and that person had planned on telling me at a later time, that was just crazy to me.
Love it. Love it. And then just like with our last couple minutes here, one question that's been kind of pondering in my mind is, what would you tell a freshman in college
Ooh.
of, kind of what he should be concentrated on as far as his walk with Christ, right? Because like we go back, we all do it. We all put God in a box. We all say kind of see you later. We'll come get you if we need you. But then almost every guy I talk to, it's like, 10 years later, 5 years later, we come to this point where, we ask God to come back and we start diving into this deeper relationship. What would you say to that freshman to speed things up?
Yeah. So I'll go practical and then I'll work back spiritual. So the practical portion would be, hey, young man, why are you doing this? And most often what I've found is people don't know why they're doing what they're doing. Or they do know why they're doing it. They're not happy with the reason, but there's some sort of carrot on the other side that is driving them forward, right? So the first thing I would do is I would challenge a young man on their why. And then I would challenge them to see if it lines up with what God says about what we should be pursuing as young men. Now, I'm speaking to how I would have been at 18, 19. Now, I can foresee that in this conversation, there'd be a lot of pushback, a lot of you don't know what you're talking about, a lot of I got this all mapped out. And I would then proceed to share the story which you and I have just unpacked. And at that time, I would say, hey, I just want you to understand I've been where you're at. These things are probably going to happen in your life. And God is not going to leave you or forsake you. That you can skip a lot of pain, heartache, and just dumb decisions if you take a little bit more introspective look at what you want to do, because God does place desires on our heart, says it all throughout scripture, that he can use you as a conduit to flow through his kingdom blessing. So the conversation would look something like that.
Love that. Love that. And then would you recommend, like, I guess this is to all men now, is like, what do you recommend? Like, what's like the daily, like call it medication dosage of like, what does your walk look like on the day of how you connect with God?
That's a great question. So I try and get my Bible study in. And by Bible study, I mean like reading scripture. And it's just a chapter. I can't break down more than a chapter at a time. And I take 30 minutes. And if I don't get that 30 minutes where I read the chapter and then I just sit and I break it down, then what I try to do is quickly recite 10 verses. So I got 10 verses right now that are promises from the scripture. And so I try and recite those every single day and just have them level set my day before starting. So like James 1:5 says, he gives counsel and wisdom to those who ask for it and those who lack it without giving them reproach. 2 Timothy, I believe it's 1:6-7 talks about having a spirit of sound mind, discipline, and without fear. Isaiah 41:10 talks about rising up on wings like eagles. Romans 12:2 talks about being transformed by the renewing of your mind, not walking in the ways of this world, and knowing God's will, which is good and perfect. Like the 10 verses that I've outlined for myself are all things that I wish I would have taken more seriously when I was 19 years old. But now as a 29-year-old man, I am reciting those promises with conviction because God has bound himself to them.
I love that. I love the intentionality that you take, and memorizing verses is super important. Reading word is super important. I think reading word is the most important that you could do on your day-to-day grind. For me, it's like if I used to fight this all the time. I'm like, God, I'm good. Like, I don't need it today. I'm good. Like, I did 6 days out of 7, but man, for some reason that 7th day sucks.
Yeah, man.
It's just like, I'm just like, God, what the heck? Like, this is so annoying. You're supposed to protect me today. And it's not even like that. It's just, I think for me, my mind frame, just having that daily morning time with God just sets me right. And it's like, I wouldn't want to go a day without eating, right? Unless I'm like specifically fasting. So why would I go a day without reading and feeding my body the spiritual food that it needs? You know what I mean?
100%. It talks about in the word how we used to live on milk, but now we're older adults and we need that spiritual food. Yep. Yeah, that word, that's your spiritual food. You don't want to go without it, or else you'll feel it. Yep. And I've gone without food for 7 days. It's not fun.
I hear that. Hey, is there any just last comments that you want to make before we end?
No, not at this time. Well, there is one thing. I'm just eternally grateful that God didn't give up on me. I
Mm,
really am. And I'm very excited to look forward to what he's going to continue to do through me because I've been brought low and now he's building me up in his new image. And I'm
mm.
excited to see what that looks like in the next 5, 10, or even 15 years.
Love that. I'm excited to see that, and I can't wait to be a part of that.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Well, hey guys, this is the Mount Valor podcast. We coming at you from La Jolla Christian Fellowship. If you guys like this, do us a favor, please subscribe or like. That would really help us out, or even spread the word of what you listen to and share this podcast and all the other episodes that we've done. Would really appreciate that. And thanks for listening. Talk to you later.